Johnson, and welcome to this week's edition of the Elite Money Market Update with Patrick Marcel. He is the founder and CEO of Elite Retirement Group, and I'm your host, Kristen Oakley. Patrick, my friend, I'm excited to be back with you. How are you this week?
Doing wonderful. We're enjoying the fall time, and it's just a great time of year to get out and enjoy things.
Absolutely.
So, definitely a great time.
Well, good. Well, I know you put together another great show. In fact, last week we did an entire show called You've Saved for 40 Years in Tax Deferred Accounts. Now what? What do I do? And we got such a great response from that show. And gosh, there's so much more to talk about as it relates to strategic tax planning in retirement. So we're going to dive a little more deeper and continue that conversation today. Sound good?
It's exciting. I'm sure everybody listening is riveted. Learning more is better.
Well, especially after hearing some of the stories of how you've been able to help clients save hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxes over their lifetime in retirement. Who doesn't want to do that? So that's our goal, right?
Yeah, I'm serious. I think, this is great stuff. I'm excited.
Absolutely. Well, good. Well, first thing I want to talk about today, I've heard you say that when you retire, the way that a person is taxed on income becomes way more complicated. So let's explain that for our viewers.
Yeah, so when you're working and you're working years, you're basically selecting what number your deductions are, right? So you're claiming 0, 1, whatever you're claiming. When you get into retirement, because of the different types of money that you're using, you have to be more thoughtful of what kind of taxes you're sending to the federal government. One of the things we don't want to do is we don't want to just not send any. Because if you don't send any taxes in and you need to be paying taxes, then they're going to start putting you on quarterlies. And that's not necessarily the most fun thing to do in the whole world. Yeah, so what ends up happening is the government is going to say, hey, you really need to be paying some in each quarter, so we don't wait to the end of the year and then you owe all this money. They want you to pay it and be on time, which is fine. They may not want to give us our money back on time, but they definitely...
Isn't that the truth? That's so frustrating, right? We do our part, and yet, yes.
Yeah. So, they want us to be on time, and what they do is they break up what they think your taxes will probably be for the year, and then you pay each quarter into a certain amount. A lot of times, accountants will help us make sure we're getting the right amount in, but it's a way to do it. Now, I don't know that we want to do that necessarily because it can be a bit of a hassle. Some people are perfectly fine with it, and so it isn't necessarily good or bad thing per se, but what we do for our clients instead is we figure out how much should they be sending in, right? So we really like to work with the accountants that either they're working with or we bring our experts in and we really get to the bottom of like, what should you be paying in? I think one of the things that people get caught up in sometimes is the tax bracket they're in versus what their effective tax rate is.
Yes.
And they're two different things. They're not even close. And you may be in the 12% tax bracket or even the 22, but your effective tax rate might be much lower. And that's where we want to get down into like, what should we be sending to the federal and state governments? We want them to pay the taxes. We don't want to be late. We don't want penalties, but we want the right amount. Our goal actually really is 0.
Right.
And as I kind of was just explaining things, you can probably tell it gets a little more involved and a little more complicated, and we're not always necessarily fully equipped to be able to have people in our corner to help us make those decisions. If we're doing it ourselves and we're very comfortable with some certain taxes being withheld, that's great. And some people are, but a lot of people just really aren't, because all they had to do is select a number.
Right.
And like, that's 0 or 1 or 2 or whatever, and let's go. And you get money back or you don't get money back when their taxes are filed, and it's pretty easy that way. Or you get to tax time and your accountant says, hey, throw $5,000 into an IRA, it's going to save you $2,000. And does it actually save you $2,000? Or does it just delay you paying that tax in at some point in the future at an unknown rate?
Yes. So you mentioned a couple of key terms. So I think a lot of people are familiar with tax bracket. How do you define effective tax rate? How does someone watching right now know what their effective tax rate is?
Well, you need us.
Well, there's a lot that goes into it, though. That's a good point. I mean, it's not like someone walking around just kind of knows what their effective tax rate is typically.
It's really interesting. A lot of people don't know that. One of the best tools we use to figure out effective tax rate, we actually have 2 of them. We have eMoney, which we do the taxes and we see exactly what your effective tax rate, which essentially what it is the amount of money you have coming in as a whole.
Right.
And what percentage, if you will, of what you're paying out in taxes, what that percentage is. So if you have $100,000 of income and you're paying out $8,000 in taxes, your effective tax rate is 8%. Okay, so that really is, sometimes we just really need the software though to figure that out because there's a lot of complexities there. Are you contributing to a long-term care plan, right? Are you over 7.5% of your adjusted gross income? Those are things that factor into and may change exactly what your taxes are.
And what age you are too, because
Yeah.
I know we've talked about this before, but when someone hits required minimum distribution age, that's another taxable event. So right now that's age 73 for most folks.
Right, and another thing that we find is that some people are hear that when you get to a certain age, I've actually heard this, that I don't have to pay taxes. Which, not exactly.
Is that a misconception that's floating around out there, right?
Yeah. But there is something to be said. When you do turn 65, you will actually have a tax reduction. When you turn 65, you get a little more of a standard deduction is what happens. So your tax burden goes down a little bit, which is nice when you hit 65. But these are all things that really, when we have a comprehensive tax strategy in place that we really can figure out with our clients. Now, again, I want to make this very clear. We are not accountants.
Right.
We love the accountants out there. They do a tremendous job. We like pairing up with those folks to make sure that we're looking at things correctly. We want them to say, yep, that looks good, because they're the ones who really are the experts. And like I said, we're not pretending to be accountants, but we really want to look at things and get ideas. And really that's what it's about. What kind of ideas can we come up with? I don't want to look at the numbers and then the client says, well, I'm going to withhold 8%. Okay, wait, hold on. Time out. Let's go to whoever does your taxes. Let's verify that looks right. Because we have a lot of great software, but am I missing something? Because that's not my area of expertise, but let's get that conversation started.
It's cross-checking it, right?
It is, absolutely. I mean, wouldn't you want somebody to check your work? If you have a builder coming in to build you a shed, do you want it, just first time he's ever done it, or he thinks he kind of knows how to build it, let's just see if it's going to go right.
Yeah,
and it doesn't. You want somebody, that's why we have a general contractor, that's why you have somebody with experience, and we have those experts, a mason, with people that really have high expertise in certain areas. They're great. They need to be part of our game plan, and they absolutely will bring a lot of value to the plan overall, and that's why we want to just bring them in the loop. We want to do some of that footwork ahead of time, though, so they know what we're talking about, what we're looking at.
Right. Well, and it's that long-range focus, too, I think, and we've talked about this. I know you have the e-money, you have the tax what-if software. Talk about the tax map portion of this.
So basically what we're doing is we're just mapping out what taxes may look like for you in the future. And really it's a very strategic strategy of taking and looking and saying, okay, well, we're looking at this kind of tax burden in 5 years. Okay, let's just say, because you're retiring. You're here now, you're going to drop down. We have this opportunity zone to take advantage of lower taxes on some of your money that you've been saving now. And we're going to map that all out. We're going to just strategize exactly what we're doing, how we're doing it, when Social Security comes into play, the tax effectiveness of that. Again, we're trying to really strategically lay it out. And when I was in Boy Scouts, and then actually in the military, this was very helpful as well, is they would give you a map, throw you a compass, and say, go find your way to here, right? So that orientating the compass to the map, all that stuff, it's really kind of what we're doing with taxes, because you're basically throwing a compass and a map and say, now you need to get over there, right? Okay, well, how do I get there?
Right.
And you have to basically figure that out. And if you don't know how to do it, it can be very, very overwhelming. And you can say, well, I don't know.
Well, overwhelming, and I would add that there's some pitfalls you can fall into unknowingly and end up paying more than you should.
Yeah, absolutely. Like we talked before about, what if you just your plan is to draw Social Security, draw your pre-tax money out, and you're not paying attention to your bracket, and you're leaving right now, you're leaving $8, $9, $10, $20,000 left in that bracket, that, let's say 12% bracket for this situation, and you're not taking advantage of it, and then 2026 hits. And now that 12 is now 15.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
And that's like probably the most likely scenario, or at least that's what could happen if they do nothing, is that everything goes back to the way it was in 2017.
Right, right.
And that could really be a problem because now all of a sudden, instead of really taking advantage of the current tax law, you're missing out. And that's why we need to map that out. We need to be strategic about it. And of course, sometimes we need to make course adjustments.
Yes.
And that's what happens.
Absolutely.
And that's why we do the plan. And we do the overarching plan. The really tax map is inside of the written plan that we put together for folks. And if you're listening and you're saying, hey, you know what, I think I really need to make sure I'm on track. I want to have this written plan. Hey, guess what? It's only going to cost you some of your time. And all you really have to do is get up, pick up the phone, make that call, reach out to us. We'd love to be able to talk to you and share with you the things that you should be taking advantage of now to make your retirement better.
Wonderful. Patrick, thank you so much. To our viewers at home, as Patrick mentioned, this is a unique window of opportunity of time for you to really engage in some strategic tax planning that has the potential to really save you tens, if not thousands of dollars when it comes to taxes over the course of your retirement. So we encourage you, pick up the phone, call this number on the bottom of your screen, 833-856-1392. You're also welcome to take out your smartphone. Simply scan that QR code down in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. That will take you over to a landing page, ask you a few short, simple questions, and a member of the team from Elite Retirement Group will reach out and connect with you to schedule your complimentary meeting with Patrick and the team at Elite Retirement Group. We have a lot more to cover today as it relates to tax planning for your retirement. Stay with us.
I believe truly that there is this non-corporate type of mentality that we have. Being fiduciaries, it puts us in a position to say, hey, we're going to put ourselves in your shoes and we're going to give you advice as if it were us and what we would recommend based upon what we know and the experience that we have for 20 years. It's hard to believe. Sometimes that's something that we can help you with. Sometimes you have to go somewhere else, but we're always going to give you the best advice we can. If there was somebody, we were going down the road and there was somebody alongside the highway that was broke down, had a flat tire, whatever, my dad would be like, you need to pull over. We need to see how we can help them. That whole thing where you just do something good for somebody and you don't have to always look for something in return. I'm a big believer in karma. You do the right thing for people, it'll come back around. You know what? Maybe sometimes you'll never even notice that that person had a better day or whatever, but we don't need a pat on the back. Sometimes just doing the right thing is the most important thing.
Welcome back, Wisconsin. You're watching the Elite Money Market Update with Patrick Marcel, founder and CEO of Elite Retirement Group. I'm your host, Kristen Oakley. We are talking today about several important things to take into consideration as it relates to engaging in strategic tax planning for your retirement. And Patrick, I know one of the things that you love to do for folks, you stress test their retirement plans.
Yep.
I would love for you to explain a little bit more what you mean by that, because I think there's a lot of peace of mind that can come from knowing that that plan has actually been stress tested, if you will.
Yeah, so what we really want to do is we want to create a scenario that probably won't happen. And we do that by taking your investments and projecting a lower internal rate of return on your investments, projecting higher inflation rates, and maybe a little bit higher taxes even. Mm-hmm. But we want to see how that'll perform over time because, yes, hopefully things go better. Mm-hmm. And things, if we just plan on the current course, I can almost tell you for sure that won't happen, mm-hmm. right? But if we plan for a little worse, a little more conservative, I feel really, really comfortable that we can get you in the right place and get you on the right track and we'll be really successful long term. So we look at it as a stress test. So we're going to stress that income. Another thing that I know is that we're looking at income and we're saying you're going to spend more every year on our projections. That's not normally how that works. In the 20 plus years I've been doing this, what I see people do is they retire and they're at this higher level of income because you're healthy.
Right.
You're younger. Here's something a client told me, which was really just very, very great, and everybody should know this. Guess what? He said, none of us are getting out of this thing alive.
Right, that is very true. Yes, I have a friend that used to say that, yep.
But that's really the truth of it, is that we're younger, we're more vital, and we can do things that are more fun, quite frankly, and we're going to spend more.
Right. Well, those are the go-go years, if you will, right? People
Yep.
retire, they finally want to do a lot of the bucket list items and travel and do all these things that they've been waiting to do. Yeah,
and in one of our other shows, I talked about one of my clients sending me some pictures. They were in Vienna, and they were like, this is amazing. And I said, don't forget to check out the churches and some of the other stuff. They got a really neat history there, but he drove truck. I drove down to Chicago. He had a dedicated route back and forth to Chicago, central Wisconsin. And he's like, Patrick, I can't do this anymore. It's too stressful. So we were able to get him set up and we worked through the whole plan and we got him to a point where he was like, I'm going to retire. And now the guy just loves being retired and he's active and he's a car collector and he does a lot of his own work. And, he's taken a job working for Meekum. Which is really, really cool. So he's working with some classic car companies, and but he's doing all this stuff, right? And that costs money a lot of times to do this stuff. So we know that, he's going to spend more now, and that's okay. But if I assume you're spending more now and then you spend more every year, that's actually stressing your income a lot more or your assets a lot more than if you because people are pretty even. Our clients take out about the same amount for that first 5 to 10 years, And then once they get to, like their 70s, their middle to later 70s, they start to slow down a little bit. And then they're like, well, we're not traveling as much. Our vacation budget's gone down. But everything else is costing more,
yes.
right?
Yep.
There's a few more doctor visits. There's therapy. There's a few more medications that are added in.
And inflation, right? Because the cost of living eventually does double depending on what the inflation rate is. So you're spending twice as much to buy the same amount of goods and services that you're buying today.
Right. So then they sometimes say, well, we might need a little more here. Not going backwards. We might just need a little more. But if we've been planning for them to draw a lot more over time, we can definitely do that. And another thing I think is really, really effective is a lot of times we'll set up somebody so that in their 10th, 11th, 12th year of retirement, that we can turn on an income stream that actually will go up and increase for them. And they'll have this automatically increasing income for the rest of their lives. And it's really, really effective that way. And there's a lot of companies out there that provide really great strategies to be able to do that. And it's amazing when I tell folks that are in that position that they're getting that income and we're reviewing their accounts because we're checking in with them like we should be. And I say, oh, by the way, this account, you've drawn it down quite a ways, but don't worry, because you're still going to be able to have that same income even if you have all the money spent out of this account. Oh, and by the way, if something bad happens and you don't live very long and there's money left in the account, whatever's left over, that's going to go to your beneficiaries.
And a lot of times that can pass tax-free if it's done correctly, right?
Yep,
That's huge.
If we're smart and we do it correctly and we do all the proper tax planning like we've been talking about, you can really be in a better position for the beneficiaries as well and yourself. And you haven't even touched on what happens when a spouse passes.
Yes,
right?
we'll have to get into that as well.
Absolutely. So there's definitely, when we stress test the income, we're just looking at lower average returns, higher expenditures, and consistently increasing that. And we're just putting some additional stress on the portfolio. And actually, it's paid really big dividends with inflation lately. For folks that are retired, that we did this type of planning with, guess what? They're spending right now a little more than we projected. But that's okay because overall, they're still on track.
Right.
And that's what's important, is to make sure that we're still on track.
For sure. And you run those plans to account for these unknown variables, which we've done shows on that in the past. You run it out to account for someone's longevity because we are living longer than we ever have before. But then you kind of put all these what ifs into it, hence the name What If Tax Software, right?
Right, absolutely. And you have to really think about the what if this happens, what if that happens.
Right.
eMoney actually has a tremendous little button that we can create different scenarios and we just pop it in and say, okay, here's what you're doing, but what if this happens?
Yep.
And then it runs it out and it compares side by side and we can really see the trajectory and how things change. And I love the fact that they give our clients a bar chart and then they'll give them also the numbers. Some people really are visual and they like the chart to see like the numbers that way, but then some people really like the numbers, the data, and they really like looking at individually every year by year, and that's and that's great. It accommodates really both, and I think it really delivers a ton of value. But at the end of the day, we talk about all this great stuff,
right?
And sometimes people don't know what they're missing if they haven't looked. If you don't look and you don't at least explore the options that are out there and what's available, you could be missing a ton. And I think our plans really deliver a lot of value for folks. And I've had people tell us so many times that, Patrick, we've had other people do stuff for us, and boy, this is just, there's a lot more here, and I'm just glad you guys can help with healthcare, with long-term care, with life insurance, with assets, with, the whole, what do we do in Medicare? When do we draw Social Security? We just couple that all together, and we bring in the team of accountants, a team of attorneys, our experts in our team, and we bring and deliver all that for our clients. And we don't charge for the plan because you know what? That's the basis of everything that we're doing. And at the end of the day, worst case scenario, you walk away with a free plan. So be it.
Right.
At least we feel that we provided something of value to you, and it's going to probably help you long term. So if you want to take advantage of that complimentary written plan that we work with our CFPs and our CFAs, that'd be great. Just all you have to do is pick up the phone, give us a call.
Awesome. Patrick, thank you so much. To our viewers at home, that number to call is on the bottom of your screen, 833-856-1392, or you're welcome to scan that QR code in the bottom right-hand corner, and that will get you connected as well. When's the last time that you stress test your retirement plan? Have you taken into consideration all the what-if scenarios that could happen in your life? That's what this is about, and so we encourage you to make this important phone call. When we come back, Patrick mentioned the spousal tax trap. Do you know what it is and how to be prepared for it? More on that after this.
As a good saver, you've been putting away money during your working years. Studies find that the biggest fear of retirees is running out of money. Market volatility isn't just the downward movement of stock prices, it's the size and frequency of change. The more dramatic the ups and downs, the higher the volatility. This can put savers who are newly retired or a few years away from being retired at greater risk. Today's generation of retirees is not receiving traditional pensions as our parents or grandparents did. Instead, we have retirement accounts such as 401ks or 403bs. These accounts typically expose your money to market risk. The last thing you want right before retirement is to lose a portion of the money you need for income. But how do you turn these accounts into a retirement income? Is it safe to keep all your retirement money sitting in the stock market? The last thing you want is to lose a portion of the money you need for income due to market loss. By working with a financial professional, you can learn how to turn a portion of your savings into an income stream for life and income for the life of your spouse if you're married. We all have moments in our lives when we wish we had taken action sooner. Don't let procrastination reign on your retirement parade. Act now before it's too late. Please call our office to set up your no-cost, no-obligation retirement income review today.
Welcome back to the Elite Money Market Update. I'm your host, Kristen Oakley, here with Patrick Marcel from Elite Retirement Group, and we are talking today about important things you need to take into consideration as it relates to engaging in strategic tax planning for your retirement. One of the things that Patrick mentioned before the break was the spousal tax trap. And I'm so glad that we are bringing this up. This is such an important topic, not always fun to think about, but let's unpack this for folks and what they need to understand about it.
Yeah, so one of the things that happens a lot of times, unfortunately, statistically speaking, is you're married and the husband passes first. Now, what I've noticed that recently there's been more engagement on both sides of a married couple in the financial picture, which is great. But one thing that we don't always think about is what will the tax ramifications be when a spouse passes. And that can really actually be like a big penalty if we're not careful.
It's often called the widow's penalty because to your point, 80% of men die married. So what does that mean statistically for us as women? A lot of times we are going to be dying as the single ones, and we are the ones then subject to this widow's penalty, this spousal tax trap. So explain what you mean by that.
Yeah, so what ends up happening is essentially when one spouse passes, the year they pass, you can still file joint. Okay. The year after that, however, now you're filing single. And essentially what happens is all the brackets go in half. Your standard deduction goes in half because there's only one of you. But a lot of times people's income doesn't really change. There's a client that I've been working with, her husband passed a little over a year ago. So last year was pretty easy. She filed joint. And now we've recreated her income for her. And we went through the budget. We actually just kind of started from square one almost, if you will. And we just went through and she's like, wow, I can't believe I need really the same amount of income, and it's almost exactly the same as what she had before. The problem is she's missing his Social Security. So we had to find a way to be able to cover
make that up, And she's in a higher tax bracket. When you're saying things go in half, that's the problem, right? When you go from married filing jointly to single filing bracket, then you're hit with that higher tax.
Yeah, and that's what she's seeing now. And she's like, wow, I got to take a lot of money out. And in their situation, there really wasn't a great way for them to be able to take IRA money and move it to a Roth. And they really didn't have Roth when they were saving. So there's, just some different confluences that came into play there, and they really, a less ideal situation. But I like to use situations that maybe we can learn from and we can grow from and say, okay, well, if it can help somebody else realize that there's a good possibility that whoever is the surviving spouse is probably going to need the same amount of income or very close, but your taxes are going to go up tremendously. They're going to basically double. We can prevent that though. We don't have to allow that to happen. One of the things that we do is if we're smart, we are working and we're retired in those years of early retirement, if you will, and later working years, getting some of that money out of the IRA, getting that into a Roth. it just makes a ton of sense.
Right, doing that Roth conversion, as
Yep.
we've talked about before.
Yeah,
Right.
and you know, the tax what if software, we use that a lot to calculate how much can we actually do in Roth conversions. It's not just looking at the tables and figuring out how much you can do. There's so many different factors that come into it. Social Security just isn't a straight line, you have this much income, you have this much taxes. It's not like that. It's
Right.
much more complicated than that. And then, you know, like I said, we were talking about your standard deduction goes on. All that stuff factors in when we lose a spouse, but when that spouse is still here, we should be taking advantage of those.
Right.
And we should be making sure that we're creating that Roth bucket. And that's why I always tell people that realistically, we want to kind of save that for the end. We don't want to use the Roth if we don't have to, because when one spouse passes, we can blend that together with pensions, IRAs to
Right.
make sure the income is still good, but the taxes aren't bad.
Right.
And then the other part is that if we leave that money to our beneficiaries, to our loved ones, they don't have to pay taxes on it.
Right, because that's the other thing that changed this year with the Secure 2.0 Act, that now
Yep.
if you inherit an IRA, you only have 10 years to withdraw that money. And so to your point, a lot of folks who are inheriting these IRAs are now hit with that tax burden.
Yeah, and actually they went a little further even, and now they're saying that you must take out some every year. You
Right.
can't, it was for a little while there, you could just wait until the 10th year.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, but now they're like, no, you have to take out some every
They
year.
want
and
their money.
Yep, they do. And that's, I think, part of the problem with the debt, and they're trying to find other creative ways to not raise taxes, but they kind of are in a way.
Without people realizing it a lot of times. Yeah.
A lot of hidden taxes. And those are
Right.
things that happen to the spouses, the surviving spouses, is all of a sudden you're hit with all this stuff. Right? Now, spousal continuation is great because it's your IRA or Roth, which is wonderful. But for a non-spouse or somebody who's more than 10 years difference in age from the decedent, that's where the issue comes in, where you have to get all that money out. And it
Right.
can be a really burden, quite
Yeah.
burdensome. But again, kind of just going back to that spouse and that tax penalty, if we do a really good job and we fill our 4 buckets, what are our 4 buckets? Tax-deferred money, tax-free money, taxable money, and then hopefully tax-deferred, tax-free money, which would be an HSA. If we had that, would be amazing, right? We want to try to develop those 4 buckets the very best possible way we can.
Absolutely.
And again, it's not as simple as just saying, write a check here, write a check here, write a check here, write a check here. It's a little more complicated than that.
Right.
But I think people can start to see that if we properly split up our assets and we properly tax manage them, somebody at some point is going to benefit from that. And we want to set up our spouses to be in the best position possible. I already told my wife I'm going for where she is.
Oh. Well, and I love you provide a safe place for people to have these hard conversations to figure this stuff out on the front end so it's not a nightmare on the back end.
Right, yep. And that's why we offer the complimentary visit. We want people to come in. We'd love to see you. And we look forward to visiting with you and learning your situation.
Wonderful. Patrick, thank you so much to our viewers at home. Thanks so much for watching. Until next time, be educated, be empowered, and most of all, be prepared.